Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. With Trump's tariff threat on the horizon, businesses on both sides of the border brace for impact.
We need Canadian economy to be successful.
I suspect it's going to be a lot of chaos.
Hoping cross-border exchange doesn't dry up. Plus, a violent incident at a Port Moody hospital.
The patient opened the curtain at this point and pulled out a machete to wave at us. This was an incident that kind of broke the camel's back.
And the calls for better safety for medical staff and horseback riders and cyclists at odds.
Paving is not an appropriate, safe type of footing for our horses.
Cyclists would like to have a direct route between Vancouver and New West.
A debate over the future of a Burnaby Lake Trail and who can share the road.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. There has been a lot of talk about how the incoming Trump administration will affect businesses north of the border. But just south, businesses and politicians are thinking about the big change as well. Liam Britton has more on their concerns after inauguration.
Spanning 6,400 kilometers, 5 time zones, 12 states and 7 provinces, the border between Canada and the mainland U.S. is vast. So too are the range of views about how changes on both sides of that border will impact relationships and businesses, even in just one state.
I suspect it's going to be a lot of chaos.
Just south of White Rock, the mayor of Blaine, Washington, calls Canadian visitors very important.
They come down and they eat at our restaurants, they pick up their packages, they shop at all of our stores.
And so any action from incoming President Donald Trump that hurts that Canadian business is a concern.
A lot of my fellow neighbors really appreciate the Canadians coming down, and they try and make them feel welcome. And I think that's going to be our #1 strategy.
Just across the line from Abbotsford in Linden, a more wait-and-see approach to Trump Term 2.
The guy's a deal maker. He's looking to make a deal, so this is his opening salvo. And this isn't the first trade issue we've had with our northern neighbors.
In Point Roberts, the international marketplace grocery store profits from Canadians looking to save a few bucks with a cross-border shop. Owner Ali Hayton was not warm on Trump's rhetoric against Canada.
It doesn't help business at all to have him talking tariffs and freaking people out and saying that Canada's going to be the 51st state. But I look at most of that as hyperbole.
But she says the biggest influence on those shoppers is the Canadian dollar. And she's hopeful Prime Minister Trudeau's successor will improve things.
If you look at Canadians' economy since he's been in, it's not done really well. And we need Canadian economy to be successful.
For new leaders in both nations' capitals, navigating a new transnational relationship will be a major issue, not one that's borderline. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Justin Trudeau's government says it's ready to retaliate against Donald Trump if he follows through with his threat to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods on the first day he takes office as U.S. president. That happens on Monday, but Ottawa says it now has a plan for an immediate counterattack. Kate McKenna has the details.
The Prime Minister's message is that Canada has a plan as industry braces for impact.
The single biggest advantage Canada has is Canadians themselves.
Today, Justin Trudeau met with his new U.S.-Canada Council, a nonpartisan group of business and policy leaders convened to deal with the tariff threat.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you could all hear me online. It's great to see everyone here today.
He told them Canada's ready to hit back if Trump moves ahead with a 25% blanket tariff on Canadian goods.
This could be devastating. This would be basically starting a trade war. The Americans would be starting a trade war against us.
CBC Radio Canada has learned the Trudeau government is planning a first round of counter tariffs to be released as soon as Monday.
The expectation is that the first round of response, should they have to go to that level, would have a relatively minimal impact on the Canadian economy, but would get the attention of key stakeholders south of the border.
The plan targets $37 billion in American goods. If that doesn't work, there's a second retaliatory tariff list that targets $110 billion of American goods. Canadian officials say everything is on the table.
We're fighting for our country, we're fighting for our economy, and we're fighting for Canadian jobs.
New revenue from tariffs could support workers and businesses caught up in the trade war.
We want to make sure that ultimately, indeed, we use the revenues to support Canadians.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister spent time in Washington telling Republican decision makers it'll be American consumers who end up paying more.
A lot of senators are very surprised by the numbers we're giving them. A lot of senators have never heard about this Trump tariff tax.
Since Trump first made his tariff threat, Canadian officials have been working nonstop, appearing on American TV, meeting with American lawmakers, and even visiting Trump himself at Mar-a-Lago. But it's still not clear what's going to happen when Trump returns to the Oval Office on Monday. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Police in Port Moody are investigating after a violent incident involving a patient at Eagle Ridge Hospital. Investigators say they were called to the emergency room after reports of a man with a machete. As Mira Baines reports, the BC Nurses Union is calling for better security at the facility.
This was an incident that kind of broke the camel's back.
Victoria Tracy, a nurse at Eagle Ridge Hospital, is urging better security for patients and staff after a violent encounter in the ER.
The patient opened the curtain at this point and pulled out a machete to wave at us and started screaming and yelling at us, making very aggressive gestures.
It was a chaotic scene with nurses calling 911, security, and moving patients.
We started moving humans as fast as we could, our colleagues as well as all of our patients that are able-bodied.
Then she saw the man leave the hospital. Port Moody police say the patient was arrested quickly, and they're looking at recommending charges.
Mental health was believed to be a large contributor in this incident, and as a result, he was also apprehended under the Mental Health Act.
In another incident, a nurse was assaulted in November at the hospital, and the suspect was criminally charged. The BC Nurses Union is calling for better security to protect healthcare workers from violence and abuse. The union wants relational security officers at Eagle Ridge who can de-escalate incidents. This type of security is available at about 24 BC hospitals, but the smaller Port Moody facility isn't on the list.
Folks who work within community-based settings, they are disproportionately affected by these types of incidences, because they don't have all of the supports that are in place for large, urban, trauma-type centers.
Fraser Health says it's up to the Ministry of Health to add Eagle Ridge to the list, but is satisfied with how it was resolved.
So far, we're very happy with the response to this situation.
The Minister of Health said it's critical to take action to address the serious issues that affect healthcare workers. It's still not clear if any specific actions will be taken at Eagle Ridge. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
4 families are safe after a fire destroyed their complex on Penalakat Island Thursday evening. The chief of Penalakat Tribes, Chehuinakwat Jack, says the whole community stepped up to help, as did neighboring emergency crews and BC Ferries. BC Emergency Health Services says it transported 5 patients to hospital.
All we just saw was like a lot of black smoke, and we just evacuated right away. Just got our shoes on, jacket, and we ran out the door. I'm just so glad my son wasn't home at the time.
We had the community members that were from the homes with no shoes on, so they just left with what was on their backs.
The chief says all 4 families have been accommodated in hotels, and the cause of that fire is now under investigation. Cities in Metro Vancouver are grappling with how best to respond to complaints between neighbours, specifically how properties are kept in good repair. As Chad Pawson reports, Burnaby recently made changes to its unsightly premises bylaws after a growing number of complaints.
It could be garbage or recycling lying about, overgrown gardens or yard waste. The way a neighbour keeps their property in order can be a delicate balance.
You can definitely do whatever you want with your property, but you also got to take in mind that you're part of a community.
I probably would go to the neighbor, I know my neighbors, so I go over and
ask them if they need help.
As a homeowner, you should have the pride in your property, and then as a community, we should all try and improve the look of our community and our homes and our gardens.
In absence of that, though, are complaints. Burnaby gets more than one a day about unsightly properties, a big jump from just a few years ago.
People are becoming more vocal about their neighborhood and more prone to reach out to express their views.
The more complaints, the more work for the city to inspect and issue cleanup orders. As a result, Burnaby has tightened its bylaws to have greater clarity on conditions considered unsightly and allow staff to authorize direct action rather than through city council. They can hire workers to do the cleanup and then add the expense to yearly property tax bills. Officials say it's meant to expedite action.
Potentially, given what's going on with council and emerging events, it could actually be months before we could actually get an order in place.
It's not just Burnaby dealing with this issue. It's common across most of BC. Here in Richmond, the city has been dealing with a case for the past 15 years. This property has had several orders to clean up, but it's still not resolved, according to the city. Property owners have the right to appeal orders. Local politicians say it can result in a lengthy back and forth.
When they appeal the order and they clean up 2 garbage bins and then they could say they've made an improvement, that's not good enough. And then it's up to council to have the will and the drive to say, no, that's not good enough, it has to change.
When did you have to deal with this one? Day says councils and communities have an important oversight role, pointing to a derelict home on Number 3 Road where intervention didn't come in time to save it.
We had no choice but to order it boarded up.
Yeah.
There was raccoons living in it, there was rats in it, it's really bad.
Day and officials in cities like Burnaby want neighbors to be involved and bring attention to problems of unsightliness, untidiness, or neglect so they can be caught in time and dealt with as a community. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Richmond.
In Vancouver, crews have started prepping to demolish one of the city's oldest heritage buildings. The Dunsmuir House has sat vacant since 2013. It stands at the corner of Dunsmuir and Richards Street. Owner Holborn Properties had left it vacant in disrepair since 2013. A recent report to the city said the building is too far gone to be saved. It served many purposes over its 115 years, including a grand hotel, barracks for soldiers, and a single occupancy shelter. A cornerstone of the North Shore's mountain biking community is the latest company to face post-pandemic woes. Rocky Mountain Bicycles announced late last year it would file for creditor protection. The company says the sharp drop in selling prices has created unprecedented financial pressure and has forced a downsizing of operations at its North Vancouver design and marketing shop.
It's kind of like a how long can you tread water situation for companies. And this is why you can see the smaller companies that don't have the same capital resources aren't able to hold on.
Rocky Mountain Bicycles had already done a round of layoffs before Christmas. According to court documents filed in Quebec, the company took a $17.8 million loss in 2023. And Darius Maravi joins us now for a first look at the weather. What's going on out there?
It's getting cold. It's continuing to get cold. Really across Canada, we're actually pretty lucky here in BC. We are far from getting the worst of it, but northeastern BC definitely getting quite chilly. A drop of about 30 degrees in some parts of the piece between just a couple days ago and really tomorrow. But other than that, things are very calm. We got a ridge of high pressure building in. It's keeping that cold air here, but it is also making sure that we're not getting any storms coming in along with that. So a few flurries may pop up in parts of the province, but besides that, temperatures are going to continue to fall into the weekend and then rise early next week. And that's really the weather story, Michelle.
All right, thanks, Darius, and see you soon.
See you soon.
A battle over trails has horse riders facing off with cyclists near Burnaby Lake. Equestrian riders are worried about plans to make trails they use more bike-friendly. That's next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The CBC concert series Road to the Junos is in Vancouver. The 5-night series kicks off January 26th and continues to January 30th at the Pearl. Get your tickets at cbc.ca/Junos before they're all gone. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
The city of Burnaby is expanding their cycling network and bringing more cyclists off city streets and onto dedicated trails. A Burnaby Lake Trail has now become a multi-use cycle path, and the city is trying to pave it to make it safer and more accessible for riders. But as Pinky Wong reports, horse riders in the park say they're being squeezed out.
How long have I been riding?
Yeah.
Oh, 45 years.
For more than a decade, Vicky Gilker has been visiting and taking care of her horse Tommy at the Burnaby Horsemen's Association. But part of the trail she rides may become inaccessible to hundreds of equestrian riders.
What was your reaction when you learned that the city of Burnaby is trying to pave part of this trail?
I was pretty upset about it. It takes away where we can ride safely. Not to mention that it makes it more of a commuter path for cyclists, and we deal with cyclists going through here all the time.
Horse riders have been using the trails for more than 50 years since the association has operated.
Paving is not an appropriate, safe type of footing for our horses. We are recreational riders and families, and we're not trained, nor do we have trained horses to be able to safely ride on pavement.
Cyclists were not allowed in Burnaby Lake, forced onto streets around the large Metro Vancouver Park. But in the last 2 months, both Avalon Trail and Freeway Trail have been opened up to cyclists. A new route that's off-road for cyclists to get through the city. To make it easier for cyclists, Council has voted to pave a section of the Freeway Trail and plans to pave more. The association says that plan will eventually cut half of the trails they can use.
Cyclists would like to have a direct route between Vancouver and New West, and that's not just for pleasure cycling, it's also for commuters who may wish to use that because it might save some time.
Jasper Tam commutes between BCIT and Lougheed Town Centre once or twice a week. He says he prefers riding on paved roads as gravel can puncture the tires of road bikes and hybrid bikes, and says this new route is much needed.
Currently, there's no real safe alternatives to getting to the Lougheed area, sort of from near the City Hall. The alternative options are Lougheed Highway, which is a 70 kilometer per hour speed limit highway, and there's no physical protection.
Thank you for slowing down.
Metro Vancouver says they are taking feedbacks on trail uses as they develop a new park management plan with the city. The Horsemen's Association is still hoping to find a way to keep trails open for their riders. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Burnaby.
Big news for soccer fans in the city. Rise FC, the new women's pro team in the city, has made a big signing. Jessica Chung has more as the team sets to kick off their season in April.
Vancouver Rise FC introduced its newest player, Canadian national team midfielder Quinn. Quinn will join the Rise this spring after 6 seasons with Seattle Reign FC. The 29-year-old won Olympic gold in Tokyo in 2021 with Team Canada and bronze at the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. Now, this comes as the Rise is currently building its roster ahead of the inaugural Northern Super League season, set to start this spring. Now, I spoke to Quinn this morning, who said how excited they are about coming back to Canada to play professional soccer and their hope of helping push the sport forward in the country.
You have young Canadians coming up thinking of what they want to be when they're older, and so now they can see week in and week out players that they want to play like, opportunities that they might have.
Now, Quinn is the first openly transgender, non-binary athlete to compete at the Olympic Games. They came out publicly in 2020, announcing their pronouns as they, them, and that they'd go by one name.
I think it pushed that league to reassess their policies and reassess the ways that they can be more inclusive. So I think this is just another aspect that will push this league to be the most inclusive league in the world.
Head coach of the Rise says Quinn is not only going to bring leadership to the team, but will also bring people to the stadium to watch the games.
They're a player that is like a fighter, a builder, a leader. So we will see a huge importance of they coming into this team.
No details yet on when Vancouver's first match will be, but the season will kick off in April. Jessica Chung, CBC News, Vancouver.
A glorious morning sunrise from our station cameras here at CBC Vancouver. Darius will have your full forecast coming up. You might argue that no one is having a better start to 2025 than Ladysmith's own Pamela Anderson. Her new film, The Last Showgirl, is being lauded by critics and audiences alike and generating serious awards buzz. Directed by Ghoussoub, the film centers on a Las Vegas showgirl faced with an uncertain future after learning her long-running show is set to close. Take a look.
I mean, Las Vegas used to treat us like movie stars. Costumes, sets. We were ambassadors for style and grace. The Las Vegas showgirl.
And Pamela joins us now. Congratulations on the film. I had a chance to watch it last night, and the production and your performance just transports audiences into that world of Las Vegas. When you read that script, what was the most compelling thing about that character?
Well, there's parallels, obviously, in our lives, but I just felt so drawn to her that I had so much empathy for the character, the mother-daughter story, and just the love of nostalgia and Las Vegas. She was just an amazing character to inhabit. It was really wonderful and fun to play with all her flaws, but still an endearing, vulnerable person.
And this was shot in 18 days, shot on film. Take me into your mindset walking onto that set in a production like that compared to other productions you've been a part of.
Oh boy, well, I just think I've just started. I mean, I've never done anything like this. So this was, diving in head first. I thought this was an opportunity to really apply what I know and what I've learned in my lifetime in this business. And so I knew it was going to be a short shoot, and so I came prepared like I would a play. And I just came off Broadway playing Roxy in Chicago, and so I really had a sense of that backstage banter and people in that world. And so I was just ready to go. I thought, this might be the only movie I ever get to do in my life, so I want to throw everything I have into it and see what I'm made of. So I really applied myself, I guess, and I'm really happy that it's resonating and people like it and they're feeling what I'm feeling, what I was feeling.
And one of the most interesting parts of this movie for me was the relationships with other women. So you mentioned the mother-daughter relationship, the relationships with the other showgirls backstage. Did you draw from your own life in creating those connections?
Well, you have to really draw from your own life in any role that you take on. But yes, I loved the sisterhood on set and the sisterhood and female relationships and how important they are, friendships. And Jamie Lee Curtis just threw her arms around me and said, I did this movie for you, to support you. And I just thought, wow, she's an incredible woman, a champion of women. And then I did the same for the younger girls. I just put my arms around them, and I think that we all made each other better, which was really nice.
And also a strong female presence behind the camera. Mm-hmm. So how did that change the dynamic on set and your approach to the film?
I mean, Ghoussoub is an amazing director, a great actor's director, and she just has this real sense of calm. She's very soft-spoken, but she knows exactly what she wants. You really trust when she's got what she needs. And Autumn Doral, too, was the cinematographer. A lot of women were on set, holding the booms, and there was it was really female-driven, but I don't think that was what she intended. It just what happened. And so it was really nice. And then plus, then we have Dave. I always say all the showgirls, and Dave Bautista. He just played that role so sensitively and beautifully and heartfelt, and we all really threw ourselves into it. And so like I said, I'm really glad that it's opening today in Canada. I'm really excited to be here. I saw the film for the first time at the Toronto Film Festival with the whole cast and with an audience, and that was terrifying, but I was happy that people liked it. And so to be here in Vancouver, because I'm a West Coast girl, I wanted to support the film here on this end.
And we love that you haven't forgotten your BC gal roots.
No.
In a recent interview, you mentioned that you admired David Lynch, and we sadly saw the news of his passing yesterday. Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, what was it about his body of work that really connected with you?
Oh, I love David Lynch. I mean, I also loved his process too, the meditation, but also his photography. I remember seeing some Louboutin ads a long time ago. This was a little bit of a blur. He just has a beautiful eye, such a visionary, and I really loved his work, and I love that he was fearless and had this singular vision, and it was all about dreams, and I don't know, I really loved him. I thought he was an incredible filmmaker, and he'll be a great loss. to the community.
And there were elements of this film, like the kind of dreamlike sequences, and the emotion was so real and so raw, but there were moments that felt kind of dreamlike, and that kind of reminded me of his work.
Oh, that's a good compliment. Thank you.
I wondered
That's great.
if you thought of that going into that role, or
I don't, well,
the sequences.
I mean, that would be Gia's department, but also the music, I think, was really beautiful in this film. Andrew Wyatt is a total genius, and the haunting kind of things, the music just kind of bends, and it's a little bit haunting, and it really, obviously, music is very important to a performance and to a film, and then to have Miley Cyrus sing the last song was a treat. I didn't know she was going to do it until it was a surprise for me, and I just love her, and I've known her for a while, and I've always supported her. She actually came to my to Roxy when I played Roxy in Chicago on Broadway. Her and her mom were there, so it's nice, full circle, how you meet these people, and we just keep on connecting.
And this movie's getting a lot of awards buzz. What is it like putting work out of this caliber and having people react to it like this?
Well, I always say, being a part of pop culture is a blessing, but it also you kind of start at a deficit because you are trying to convince people that you're human, and then that you can be an actress and transform into these other characters. So it was a real challenge. I had to be very focused, and it took a lot of work and dedication to do this role that I did, to prove to myself that I could do this. And so to have, a SAG nomination, which is your peers voting for you and other actors, it was really exciting to me because there is a lot of work that goes into a performance, and I was just really grateful and really shocked, and it all feels very surreal, but it just proves that anybody can do anything. I don't come from a movie family or a artistic kind of background in my family at all. This is just a life that I've created for myself, so I appreciate the support. I appreciate people going to the film, and you can really make it up as you go along. That's what I've done. I took an unorthodox route, I guess, to get here, but to be in these rooms with Nicole Kidman and Demi Moore and Tilda Swinton is just, it's scary and it's exciting, and I have to always remind myself that I do belong in those rooms, but it's been a process. It's been a practice to have the confidence to walk up to people like that and shake their hand and be there, because I don't know, I think you have to believe in yourself before others do, and that's been a journey and a experiment for me too. I came back to Canada to peel it all back, get back into my garden, and remember who I was and what I love to do and what I want to look like and what all these things, and then the script came. But I had to kind of get to a point where I was ready for it, and so I'm so ready for it, and I'm so ready to do more. This is the most exciting time in my life.
And such an exciting time for us to connect with you, and you have a very exciting few months coming up. So we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being so supportive. And I think I'm just really excited that it's out today, here.
Thank you for being with us.
In my hometown.
BC Gals.
BC Gal, that's right. Thank you.
Thank you. Former Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland made it clear today she will join the race to replace Justin Trudeau as leader of the Liberal Party. In a one-sentence post on social media, Freeland said, "I'm running to fight for Canada." And in an op-ed in the Toronto Star, she implied she'd retaliate against any American tariffs dollar for dollar, targeted precisely and painfully. Freeland will officially join the race on Sunday. Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney launched his campaign yesterday. Officials in Kingston, Ontario say many families there are struggling to afford food and other basics. They say the situation is so severe they've declared it an emergency, and it's not the only city in the province to do so. Denda Kema has more.
People are drowning. They're underwater.
For Kingston Councillor Greg Ridge, the pain of food insecurity is personal. His dad was hurt on the job when he was growing up, and at times their family struggled.
I remember once in the kitchen, my mom was crying, and I went over and I gave her a hug, and I said, "Mama, it's going to be okay." And these are things that they stay with you for the rest of your life. They could affect your mental health.
Thank you very much. This week, Ridge and the rest of Kingston City Council declared food insecurity an emergency, and they're calling on the province for help. Public health officials here say roughly 1 in 3 households is being forced to choose between food and other basics. At this meal program, staff see that reality every day.
Food insecurity has increased in community, and we're seeing more people visit that are from all walks of life, people that are employed, people that are unhoused, and everything in between. So it's not getting better.
Kingston isn't the first Ontario municipality to declare an emergency. Toronto and Mississauga have done it too. In a statement to CBC, the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services says the province has boosted rates for the Provincial Disability Support Program and continues to invest in school meal programs. But officials here in Kingston say more, much more, is needed. Dan Takama, CBC News, Kingston.
Still to come, a series of Israeli attacks killed more than 100 Palestinians in Gaza days before the January 19th ceasefire deadline. We'll have the latest after the break.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is, it's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
As the Los Angeles wildfires have consumed neighborhood after neighborhood, the flames have unleashed vast amounts of toxins. And even after the air is clear, that is going to pose hazards for people whose homes were spared. The CBC's Mike Crawley has the story.
Untouched by the flames of the LA wildfires, this house still poses plenty of work for this cleanup crew.
We get a lot of people calling for the same thing. We have about over 20 jobs right now only in this zip code.
As the wildfires begin to weaken, tens of thousands of Californians turn their thoughts to returning home.
I can tell you the entire city family is working collaboratively to get you back into your homes and communities as soon and as safely as possible.
Even those whose houses were spared will face health risks in the days to come.
So I just want to show you a little bit of the fine particles all over the black.
Kate Gammon and her family have returned to their Santa Monica home after fleeing it for 4 days.
What we've been dealing with since we've come back has been this rain of ash every day. And of course, this ash is not just brush fire, it's not just wood, it's the metals and the plastics and the oils in people's homes.
Toxic after effects of urban wildfires can linger for months. New research found high levels of volatile organic compounds in homes weeks after this Colorado fire, and people who lived nearby reported health symptoms as much as a year later.
Headache, dry cough, itchy, watery eyes, strange taste in their mouth.
One key factor, wildfire smoke carries noxious gases into homes.
And they absorb into all porous surfaces. So they'll absorb into carpets and rugs and sofas, but also drywall is porous.
That means the LA returnees will face big cleaning jobs and will likely want to buy high-efficiency filters that remove particles from the air.
The main thing that they can do to protect themselves now is going to be ensuring that they have the cleanest air as possible.
Little is known about the long-term health effects of exposure to wildfire smoke, although some research suggests it may bring elevated risks of some cancers. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Israel's cabinet is deliberating on whether to ratify this week's Gaza ceasefire agreement. The meeting began this afternoon but has extended into the evening. Early in the day came the news that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet had approved it. But in the full cabinet, there is opposition. Two hardliners have threatened to resign, one demanding the deal be rejected, the other that the war resumes when the agreement's 6-week first phase ends. Israeli warplanes have kept up strikes in Gaza. Officials say more than 100 people have been killed since the agreement was announced on Wednesday. They say the total killed since October 2023 is approaching 47,000. For Palestinians living in Gaza, life could get even more dangerous before it gets better. The enclave is bracing for another wave of attacks in the hours before the ceasefire is set to take hold. And even if the fighting does stop, the casualties in Gaza are almost certain to rise. Margaret Evans explains why.
One more farewell in a land soaked in blood. The ceasefire set to come into effect in Gaza on Sunday in sight, but out of reach for the dead being mourned here. Victims of an Israeli missile strike in Khan Yunis on Wednesday, after a breakthrough in diplomacy was announced. More than 100 Palestinians are thought to have been killed in Gaza strikes since then.
Ceasefires are inherently dangerous times.
Aid agencies are waiting anxiously for calm that will allow them, they hope, to work.
There's been drugs that we've been waiting for since April of last year, painkillers, supplements for children. We don't have a fridge for vaccines.
A pause will also allow Gazans to count the dead. The death toll could be 40% higher than numbers reported by Hamas officials in Gaza, according to a recent report looking at the first 9 months of the war.
We find that it's between 55,000 to 78,000 that were killed, possibly from October to June. The median is around 64,000.
That compares to a count of 38,000 by Hamas officials for the same period. Dr. Zaina Jamaluddin says the statisticians used a sampling technique that relied on cross-checking lists.
We only relied on names of people who were killed and those who have IDs, but these have also been verified by the UN.
25-year-old Mahmoud Sukar lives with the sound of an Israeli drone overhead and not much else. 17 members of his family, including his twin brother Mohammed, killed in an airstrike over a year ago. He keeps their death certificates close. I carry them so the world sees how we were once a family, he says, and now they're reduced to death certificates. Sukar says he's lived through too many wars in his young life. It's enough, he says. The most precious people are gone. So much more than numbers on a page. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
He's one of BC's biggest exports, and tonight he's the subject of a look-alike contest who will be crowned the best, Ryan Reynolds. We hear from some hopefuls after this.
the Canucks' losing streak and fans' resulting despair continues after a 5-1 loss to the LA Kings.
Alex Turcotte going to the net. Kempe centers. Turcotte scores. Under a minute into the game. 51 seconds.
The Kings scored 3 times in the first period alone, a disastrous start for the Canucks. They eventually scored, but it wasn't enough to turn things around.
I was really ride or die last season, but yeah, it's been kind of sad to see them not be as good as they were leading up to the playoffs and in the playoffs themselves.
They could be doing better. But they're going to come back.
They got slapped last night. I did see that. But hey, you can wish good for the future, right?
I don't know. It's sad though, because last year was really good. So.
Despite the loss, the Canucks raised close to $200,000 for wildfire relief in Los Angeles.
They'll turn it around, right? Apart from the coastline and the Canucks, Vancouverites also claim pride over one of the city's biggest celebrities, Ryan Reynolds.
Tonight, a sold-out drag show is hosting a look-alike contest for him. Earlier today, we talked to some here in studio, and host Stephen Quinn crowned one of them the best Ryan of all. Take a look.
Can we get your Ryan name, please?
Ben Anna Split.
Yes, Ben Anna Split, right.
Yep, and then we have
Pixie.
Wandering Pixie.
Yes, Wandering Pixie.
Just
good.
Jenny. JK.
Can you now give me your impression, just a sample of Ryan Reynolds?
Listen, I love my wife, okay? I really, really love her, but not as much as Hugh Jackman. Although, not as much as my aviation gin sold across Canada. And I have one question for you, Margaret. Will you marry me? Because I'd like to date you.
Today's fun fact. Originally, I wanted to be Leatherpool instead of this dollar store Deadpool thing I got going on. However, to get the amount of leather we would need to cover this glorious gluteus maximus would horrify the vegans so badly that they'd be like, "Oh my God, would someone think of the poor Bezos?"
Just coming really close here. So, as I look out at this studio, at my fellow handsome Ryans around me, I cannot help but think I am so very adorable. I'm adorable.
What are you even still doing here? We're all done. You're not going to get a preview of tonight's show, and the real Ryan is not going to walk in. The studio could not afford that. So make sure you're at the show tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I don't know if it's because they were the most verbose, but I'm going with Wandering Pixie.
Wandering Pixie?
Yeah.
What? Woo!
Well, the English accent was endearing.
Thank you so much. Steven says your English accent was endearing.
Aw, thank you, Steve. You're so sweet.
But also the full mask on as well is very good.
And finally tonight, let's take a look at your long-term forecast. Darius, take it away.
Right, it's getting cold. It's getting really cold, really, across the country and down into the U.S. because we've got this Arctic air coming down. BC really not getting the worst of it, which is a little bit of good news, but still definitely getting cold. And the reason for that is up here. This is the is not up here. This is the polar vortex. It is 5 to 15 kilometers above the surface of the Earth and always stays over the North Pole. It does not directly affect our weather. So when you see headlines that say there's a polar vortex coming, roll your eyes. That's what I do. What is actually happening is thanks to right here. This is the polar jet stream. It contains all that Arctic air up north, but every once in a while it weakens or it gets a little bit more wavy. It starts to dip further south and it allows that Arctic air to come down with it. And that is what's happening. Complicating things, the polar jet stream and the polar vortex sometimes interact and that might be happening, but not really. And if you say this is the polar vortex's fault, I'm gonna roll my eyes at you. So please, polar jet stream. Thank you. Arctic outbreak, if you want a catchy term for it. Now, let's take a look at our precipitation forecast, and you'll notice nothing in sight. There's very calm conditions across BC, calm but cold, especially if you're up in the northeast where temperatures in the wind chills getting down into the minus 30s. Parts of the northern parts of Canada could see wind chills in the minus 50s, parts of the prairies also into the minus 30s. So Definitely getting chilly, but we're going to continue to see that drop in terms of those highs tomorrow. And then as we get into the end of the weekend and early next week, temperatures will start to recover. Same thing in terms of those lows. We're going to see them drop a little bit further into tomorrow in some places, but then start to recover over the next couple days. So it's really just a brief period of cold, sticking around a little bit longer in the south, but we do get it later in the, it's happening later to us, so it evens out. Conditions across the province tomorrow are mostly sunny with a few flurries scattered across the board. The northwest may be getting some periods of proper snowfall. And here's a 5-day forecast. Michelle, lots of sunshine there, clearing up in the mornings. Watch out for frost in the morning as well, though, because it's getting chilly. Have I said that enough times?
All right, and that's all very important and good, but you know what day it is, Darius. Okay, and today you're going to tell us that humans are not the only ones to give themselves and others names. There are animals that do it too.
That's right. And I have to tell you, the field of research into animal language is it has a long history, a complicated history. People might remember Coco the gorilla, who developed sign language. And so there's some controversy as to whether he was actually speaking language, if it was just animal mimicry, which is a well-known animal behavior, and scientists were kind of reading into it. And so for a while, the field sort of languished. It was not really being researched. But about a decade ago, in 2013, dolphins were discovered to give each other names and to have their own unique identifiers, their own pattern of whistles. And actually, well, just take a listen. You could tell that there is one dolphin that is saying its own name, giving its own unique pattern of whistles, and then another dolphin is responding. It's often used as a distress call. But dolphins are not the only one, because a decade later, just last year, we discovered that elephants also have their own unique identifiers. Now, when I say elephant noise, you're probably thinking of, this is my best elephant impression. But really, that's sort of an emotional outburst for an elephant. Most of the time, they're having these low rumbling noises. And so when scientists use a machine learning model to identify those unique codes, those names in their sounds, they were able to play one back to a herd and, well, take a listen. So they played the sound, and then out of that whole herd, just one elephant responded. And then just a couple months later, marmosets. This is a New World monkey, and just a warning, probably not what you're going to think a monkey is going to sound like. It's like a whole marmoset conversation. And with machine learning,
and here you are.
And here I am. I teleported. Yeah.
Right. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, as well as on YouTube and our website, cbc.ca/BC. I'll have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. Have a great night.